All right, so this is where we left off last week. Last week we completed a bit of a 3D model of our building on our site. And I think we do have topography here. The topography is hidden, unhide element. So topography is there as well. So today we're going to try to finish off a lot of this building, and then as I mentioned, next week maybe we will just finish tweaking some graphics and tweaking, maybe do some renders and stuff like that. So, all right, so looking back at our PDF we have here, so we have our building roughly modeled. We still have to do our lookout area. We have to do our roof. And I mean, we're getting close. So let's start off with our roof. Where am I going here? Let's go back here, and I'm going to hide my topography again. I'm just going to do HH. And so we have a rough building here, and what I want to do with this is I want to show you my methodology for doing roofs. And you know, I think this is a very easy building, and we maybe don't need to really do it for this building, but I want to show you anyways because I think it will help a lot with very complex roofs. And so what we're going to do is we're going to open our second floor plan, which we don't have here, or at least I don't have. So I'm going to go to the view. We're going to go to plan views. We're going to go to floor plan, and we are going to go to level 2 and click OK. And again, our topography is hiding all of this, so we're just going to hide our topography right now. We're going to deal with our topography at some point. But it is hiding our building right now. And we actually don't see anything either because our walls go below our second floor. So we're just going to turn on an underlay over here in our properties. Underlays are good, but I recommend being a little bit cautious with underlays. Make sure you turn them off because it can make your drawings not look the greatest. And so with that being said, we're going to start off with part of our roof. And so the part we're going to start off is the main gable. So this longer part here. So we're going to go to our roof, and we are going to do a roof by footprint. And I like to always use the pick wall tool. I find the pick wall tool is such a great function when you're doing roofs and different elements, floors, because when you start to move walls, all those elements move with it. So we're going to click our pick wall tool. We're going to make an overhang of, let's do an overhang of 1 meter. Or let's do 9.9. So 900 millimeters. And we're going to click basically our 4 sides here, like so. And we're not going to click this last one here right now. We're just going to trim and extend these lines in. So now we have a box like this. And the last part of this roof is we're going to take these 2 lines and we're going to turn off the slope on the ends, and we're going to keep the gable going this direction. And we can click our check mark now. And if we go back to 3D, now we have a gable roof going this direction. I'm going to increase the slope a little bit. So let's make the slope on a 45-degree angle. So this would be a 12-12. And so we have a nice steep roof there now. And the next part is our other roof that's kind of adjacent to this. And there's a few different ways to actually do this roof. And I'm going to show you the kind of easy way, and then I'm going to show you the maybe more complex way of doing that. So we're going to start off by clicking our roof button again. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click those boundary lines, but we're going to only click 3 this time. And our last line, we're just going to join by using the normal line tool. So we'll join those lines up. We're going to select the 2 center lines here. We're going to turn off define slope, and we're going to click our check mark. So essentially now we have these roofs that look like this, and maybe what we want to do is change our slope to be the same. So we'll change that to our 45-degree angle. And for me, I like doing stuff like this because we have some opportunities to do some unique things with the roof line. And you know, personally, it's sometimes nice to kind of accentuate or maybe make one part taller than the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower this entryway down a little bit. So I'm going to make this base offset of -600, so -0.6. And basically it's going to make that roof 2 feet below our other roof up here. And it just adds a little bit of architectural interest that makes the roof look a little bit different. And so the next part of this is how do we join these roofs? And I'm going to show you how to do that, but we might have to do it again in a little bit because we're going to make some adjustments to this. And the reason why we're going to make some adjustments is I want to show you a little bit of how we model. And the reason why we model a little bit differently is because I think it allows us to achieve nicer looking elements very easily and or maybe with less fuss. And so here's kind of a cool easy button. So we have a roof like this. We can go, we can click our roof, and under modify, you're going to see this little button here at the top, and it's going to say join unjoined roofs. And essentially, it's kind of a cool quick button where we can select the, let's actually click it. So we can select the border, the edge of this roof, and then we can select the face of the roof we want to connect. And then here's the magic part. It automatically extends in and joins. And so, again, that's a really nice easy button. And we're going to leave the easy button on for a minute. But, you know, that makes it really easy to connect these elements and make your modeling a little bit quicker. And so for me, I use this technique in design very often. But once we move past the design, the client liking the design, we start to do things a little more custom. And so let's talk about walls, or let's talk about the roof, I guess, first. And so, you know, with this building, I mean, there's a couple things. One, this roof looks really thick, and maybe that's the reality of the structure. Maybe the structure is quite thick, but we often like to make our soffit, make our exterior maybe a different thickness than our roof, or maybe we do have a really thick roof, but you know, having this big, thick assembly like this doesn't look great. So I'll show you a couple techniques with this. So one thing that I like to do is we're going to go to Edit Type here, and we're going to create a new roof type. And so we have a couple in here. Maybe we will do, let's start with steel bar joist, generic. We actually don't have any good roofs here. Warm roof timber. Let's start with that roof. And let's just see what the layers are here. So that's a good layer breakdown. So let's duplicate this. And if you look at the outline talks about us wanting to do a standing seam roof. And so for those that like to render, I'm going to show you a little trick with standing seam roofs as well. Maybe not today. We'll see. We'll see how far we get. But let's just call this standing seam roof. Normally I'll add a little bit more detail to that name, but we now want to adjust these interior layers. So the rigid insulation we can keep. All these things I think we can keep here. Wood furring, and then our wood structure. And so the wood structure layer, that's something that we don't often keep. We like to actually do our roof structure separately, or we'll model. And so maybe what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove my roof structure and wood furring. Yeah, we'll keep that. You know what, I am going to remove this rigid insulation. So we're just going to have these kind of 5 layers here. And we're going to change our finish, our asphalt bitumen roof to steel. So let's find steel roof. Let's see if there's anything in here. There is not. Let's just type in roof and see what comes up. We have asphalt shingles, roof EPDM, roof tile. So there's not really a lot of great roofs in here. So roof metal, so we can bring that one up. We'll use that one as a basis. And so the one downside of this roof metal is there's really no pattern or hatch to this roof. I believe it's just, there's nothing there. And so for me, I actually don't like showing a hatch pattern. If we did, we could use a horizontal line, which I think we have, or a vertical line here. We'll use a vertical line as kind of our roof hatch, just to show that there's kind of those lines going up and down a roof assembly. So we could set that for that, but generally we don't, because we like to actually model our standing seam pieces, and we do that from a rendering perspective, because when you actually go to render that with those standing seam pieces on, it looks just really crisp when you have that. So, all right, let's have our metal there, and let's click OK, and we'll click OK. And so this roof is going to get really thin. And again, I like having some of our layers broken out like that because, again, it gives us a lot more control over what it looks like architecturally. So, all right, so we have our roof layers there. And so let's talk about how to make this roof a little bit more accurate, or maybe a little bit more custom in terms of how it's connected. And so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to adjust our view range. And what I want to do is I want to actually see the peaks of the roof. I want to see all the way up. And so we're going to change our associated level to maybe be 4 or 5. That could be one way to do it, actually. The other way is you could just create a new datum and just call it top of roof. But I think this will work out fine for now because we're not going to have a second floor in here. So let's maybe change this to 5 meters, and let's change our cut plane to 5. So we see most of the roof. I think that's okay. So now when we want to join these roofs, I think the interesting thing with these roofs is, right now if we look on the interior, see how our roof is cutting through the inside of this. And so, if this was a lodge, you maybe want to, capture that view all the way inside. And so let's go back to here. And I like to use one of my favorite tools, which is reference planes. So if we go up to the top here, reference planes, and all this will probably make sense in a second. But what I'm going to do is I have these roofs joined. And so if you don't see a line where they intersect, you could simply join them. And another way that I would actually go about this process is if I take that roof I want to intersect and I over size it, so I just make it artificially in whatever amount that I wanted, and we click the check mark. And so now you can see that they're still intersecting, but now the roof's going way farther in. And so again, if this was the case and you had, let me just remove this join here. So if you had this like this, so you created these two intersecting roofs, but you don't see that line where that valley is, we can simply use this join tool here. And this join tool, once we join these roofs, we're going to see that intersecting valley again. And so what I'm trying to tell you with all this, if you have a really complex roof like this, I like to model the roof in separate pieces, and then we join the roofs, we find those intersecting lines, and then we use reference planes to denote where those areas are. And I'll keep talking here for a minute longer, and then I will pause and let you catch up. So now that I have these reference planes in here, I can edit this roof so that it exactly follows where they intersect. And so we're going to use our pick line button here. I'm going to pick these reference planes. And then I like how the roof actually wraps in on the edges here. So I'm going to pick these two lines here. And so we're just going to trim and extend this now. And again, I'll pause in a second. Like so. Delete that line. And then we're just going to select all these pieces and turn off define slope. Click our check mark. And so that's there. And then one last part is we need to do it to this roof as well. So we'll click our edit footprint. We'll click pick line. And we'll pick these lines here. We'll use the split element button. We'll split this in the middle. And we'll trim those now. And we will turn off our define slope on that. And again, hit the check mark one more time. And so basically now we have this roof that perfectly intersects on the inside. So really that's, a lot of talking for, I guess, that little exercise, but that was really the goal, was to get this to intersect like that. I'll pause here for a second and let everyone catch up if needed. All right, so now we have the basics of the roof done. I want to focus a little bit of attention on the walls, and I want to show you a couple techniques I use for a building like this. So if we wanted to have maybe some areas of curtain wall, but we also wanted to have some areas that are walls, and so I want to show you how I would structure something like that. So we're going to go back to our first floor plan, and we have our building here. Our grids are oriented to the outside of the stud wall. That's kind of another practice. So when you're dealing with maybe more wood frame construction, obviously in big commercial construction like you're using in your studio projects, you want to center structure on the center of the grid. But sometimes in residential, when you're doing wood frame construction, we kind of either do the center of stud or sometimes we do it to the exterior stud. So not a huge deal, just there might be different standards for that. So what we want to do is we want to add some curtain walls in here because we want to make this feel a little bit more grand. But what I would like to do is I'd like to maintain some of the corners of our building. And, really just from a practicality standpoint, I want to make this feel like it's a building that actually can stand up versus it just being full of curtain walls. So my favorite tool, again, is reference planes. So I'm going to use the reference plane button again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an offset of, let's maybe do 0.6, so about 2 feet. And we're going to offset in. And what we're going to do is we're going to create some offsets in a few different spots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a way to peel back our wall a little bit and just have it to be really uniform. So what does that mean? So essentially I'm going to delete our wall that's in the middle of these areas. I'm just going to turn off my UI a little bit there. So we're going to click the split element button, and I'm going to split the walls on all 4 sides of our major sides here, and then I'm going to pull those walls back to be at the area of these grid lines. So we're going to pull this back to that grid line, and we're going to pull this back to the grid line as well, and we're going to pull this one back to the grid line. So, I mean, not overly complicated. I mean, you didn't really need to do reference planes to do this, but I like it from an organizational perspective. It's very uniform, and it's the reference planes really help guide you. And so now we kind of have this weird looking building. I'm just going to hide my level lines. So I'm just going to do VG and hide my levels. And I'm going to grab all of these walls and select them all from underneath like that. And I'm going to attach them all to the roof. And it's going to give me an error message. And I'm just going to do it again for this front part. And so now our walls kind of look like that. And so now what we're going to do is replace the remainder of these areas with that curtain wall. So now we're going to have kind of a more cool, kind of lodge look to this. So let's go back to our level 1. And we're going to go to our walls, curtain wall. And let's click storefront here. And I'm going to just draw a storefront over on the side for a second. And this is another little thing that I like to do with curtain walls. Did I talk about doing this with curtain walls earlier in the semester at all? Where I kind of set up a few different types. Did I do that at all? Okay. So what I like to do with curtain walls is I like to set up a couple types. So I'm going to call this curtain wall, and I'm going to call this no horizontal. And so let's call it vertical only, no horizontal. And then we're going to do another one, and the next one's going to be called no horizontal or vertical. And so I like to do this because it gives me a lot of flexibility with setting something up, but then also reconfiguring the curtain wall after, and you don't have to worry about your mullions being pinned. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change our spacing. We're going to change our spacing to 1.2. The reason why I'm using 1.2 is 1.2 is about 4 feet. 4 feet's a very manageable curtain wall grid spacing. You can still put a door in there. You can use some operable windows, but just something that we found in the industry that makes a lot of sense. Horizontal grids, on the other hand, we are actually going to change to none. And we are going to turn off our horizontal interior mullions. And so now we're just going to have our vertical mullions only. And so this is what this is going to look like. So we kind of have just this vertical piece. And then I'm going to copy this over one more time. And I'm going to do the same thing again. But I'm going to change this to be no horizontal, or no vertical as well. So this will be no horizontal, or no vertical, no horizontal. And I think the cool thing about our exercise here today is we're going to actually convert this to be our quiz after. And so the cool thing about setting some of this stuff up, you can use this for future projects. So here I'm going to turn off my vertical grid and change that to none, and change this to none as well. So for me, I'll have, I forgot to delete the grid lines. Let me just do this. Grids. Should have hit delete grid lines. There we go. So for me now, I really like doing this because you have your storefront, which your storefront has horizontal and vertical. So when you're just quickly drawing a wall, you can kind of get all that stuff. And then I like verticals only because I think it looks a little bit sleeker, but then you can control where you put your horizontals. And then I like to have one with nothing, just the border, because again, it gives you more control of where you put that. So what does that mean and how do I use it? So let's go to our level 1. And I'm going to go to our walls and we're going to draw our vertical only. And we're going to draw this across in this space here. And I think this is a great setup and a great start. But maybe what I want to do is I'm just going to attach that to the roof. What I want to do is I maybe want to have a wider section in the middle for a door. And so what I do now with this is I actually change this to be no vertical, no horizontal, but I don't delete the grid lines. And the reason why is that's going to allow me, it's going to unpin all the grid lines, and that's going to allow me to move the grid lines without causing havoc in our grid system. So let's go back to level 1. And so, maybe what I want to do is I want to delete this center grid line. And so now maybe this looks like this. So we kind of have some big horizontal grid lines here, but now, some small vertical grid lines on the side. We have this kind of big section in the middle, kind of primed for an entry door. And so now what I like to do is I can go to curtain grid. I can go to one segment only. And we can add a vertical segment at, let's just say 3 meters there. And so now we can kind of style, I guess maybe is a good way to say it, but we can style our elevations a little bit more, or I guess we can have a little more control over styling our elevations with this kind of tool. And then, obviously this, we can put a door in, so we can delete our bottom mullion, and we can go to insert, load out as family, and bring in a door. But I'm actually going to do something else. I'm going to go to bimobjects.com. Objects. So this is a great website. It's free to download everything. You do need an account, but it's free to download everything. Let's see if it lets me sign in here. And so for curtain walls, I think there's a couple things you can do very simply to make some stuff better. And so there's a company called Shuko. So Shuko here. So Shuko makes curtain wall products. And so you can actually download their mullions and different things like that. But I want to just download, they actually have a plugin apparently. I want to download maybe a door. And I might actually abort from doing it with Shuko in a second, because it looks like they want you to use their plugin now. So there's one company called Solar Innovations. I don't really know who this company is, but they make a lot of doors and windows and products, stuff like that. So we use theirs quite often. So what you want to look for is something that says curtain wall panel. So if you find a door that has curtain wall panel, that door you'll be able to put into a curtain wall. So we can also search just in curtain wall here. I'm just going to see if I can quickly see pivoting, curtain wall panel window. What else do we have? Tilt and turn. Let me just type in curtain wall panel door. So this door, swing door, terrace door, curtain wall panel. Let's see if this works. And we'll download that. Kind of wish they named them a little bit better. Like, I wish there was a more unique naming convention that went with curtain wall doors, but I guess that's just how it works. And I probably should have actually grabbed a double door, but we'll see if this actually loads in and is the right type of door. I may have been deceived, but we'll find out. Oh yeah, let's see here. Curtain wall door. Yeah. So now we have this kind of curtain wall door in here, and you can tell just actually by downloading that Solar Innovations one, it looks way better because there's a handle there. It doesn't look like that just piece of glass that you see, you know, with just the curtain wall. So, anyways, just a couple little tricks there with that. So now that we have that going, let's go back to our level 1 and let's just draw our curtain walls in our other areas. And I mean, you can certainly do some other things with this if you want. Obviously, we're kind of getting to the end of the semester and you probably don't have any interest in doing anything else, but the option's there if you want it. I think this is actually a cool project to have in your portfolio. So I mean, there's some food for thought with that. I mean, it might be nice to develop this model in a good way so you can actually use it for your portfolio. So we have our 3 curtain walls here, and you could certainly download some sort of curtain wall panel system from that website and find something that you know, maybe is a multi-panel thing that opens, and you can use this technique to have some control. And so again, I use the vertical mullions only just to kind of create that pattern, and then I switch it to be the no vertical, no horizontal, so then I can customize that pattern. I can move the mullions to whatever I want to be, where I want them. So anyways, well, we have this done. I think this is looking pretty good. There's a few things we can do to spruce this up a little bit more, which I might do in a bit, but let's continuing on with this basic set of modeling parts. So let's model a floor. So in here we'll have a floor, and let's find a floor here. There's not really a great floor here, so I'm going to go, actually we could do the timber wood finish floor. I think that's fine. So let's pick our walls here. And with the picking of the walls, I usually skip over, like I try to pick one wall per face. So I skip over some of the pieces that we've already picked that are in the same line. And now we can trim and extend all these lines. And that will give us a floor. Like so. And then I'm just going to select all of these lines here. It looks like we are extending in, so let's see if we can flip this. So now all of these are going to the outside of that stud, which is correct. So that looks good. And so let's click the check mark there. And so now we have a floor here. So that looks a little bit better. And I think the one last thing I'm going to do with this building per se is I'm going to add foundation walls around it. And I think this is something that you can do with a lot of your projects, even your commercial building, by adding that trench wall kind of around your building. It looks like your building is touching the ground. And so that's kind of one common thing I see with a lot of people just starting to, you know, work with Revit and design. It's like having some sort of foundation, something that's grounding it to the ground, is just a nice visual piece that helps. So let's go to our elevation here. And I'm going to create a level below. So let's create basement. So let's make our basement maybe 2.6 meters down. We'll call this level -1. And we're going to add a couple other levels here in a second. So if we go back to our PDF, and I don't know exactly how many stairs down we are. I don't know if this thing says. No, that would be too easy. So I'm going to guess we are maybe down, I don't know, maybe 2 meters down from there. Something like that. So let's plan for 2 meters down. So let's go back to Revit and let's add another level. And we're going to make, just copy this level down as well. And we're just going to go 2 meters down. And I think this also does something wonderful. You have your datum lines here. And if you remember back earlier in the semester, I wanted you to make kind of a hard cut with those datum lines. Let me just hide this topography for a second. So we have our building looking like that. We have our level 1. We have our grid lines. So let's extend our grid lines up. We'll extend our grid lines down. And I think we'll probably add one more level here at some point, but we'll just leave that for now. We'll call this observation. Let's call it observation deck level. And so that's our building right there. We have our CAD file here. I'm just going to hide this as well. So now we have these levels here. We kind of have some stuff to start with that. So let's go back to our level 1, and I guess we should probably create these other 2 levels. So let's go to View, Plan Views, and since I just copied those levels down, it didn't automatically create these levels. So we're going to add our level 1 and our observation deck. And so with our level -1, we want to draw a foundation essentially under those walls. But, I think I like to, be really simplistic in my execution of stuff. And so we already have these walls here that are all in the right spots. So why don't we just copy them down? So I'm just going to select one wall on each side here. And I'm just using the control button on my keyboard to select all these. And once we have all these selected, we're just going to use the copy button up here under Modify. We're going to paste to selected levels. We're going to paste to our -1. And we're going to change the top constraint to be 0. And we'll trim and extend that in a minute. But let's change this wall type to be probably, we'll probably do like 300 concrete. And so let's go to our -1, and we'll just trim and extend these lines here. So trim and extend. And now we kind of have our box for our building there. So we're getting somewhere. And so the next part is our observation deck itself. And so let's go to our north elevation, and what we're going to do is we're just going to fix these grid lines. So we want to, these are actually all in a group, so let's extend those up and down. And click the check mark, and those should all be extended up and down. And so let's go to our observation deck. And so our observation deck is this whole extents down here. So let's go to this, and let's go to our architecture tab. Let's go to floor. And I'm going to assume this floor for this observation deck is probably going to be this lightweight concrete, just because it's a durable way of doing an outdoor floor like that. And so we're just going to use the rectangle button here, and we're going to create an offset of probably 300 millimeters, just because potentially some of our columns and our support structure for this observation deck are going to be on our grid lines. So we want that floor to be a little bit larger. So let's make this 0.3 bigger. And so let's grab our observation deck and extend it all the way across this whole front part. And let's see what that looks like in 3D. So now we have this observation deck down at this other level. And the next part is to do the roof. And so let's look back at our PDF, what we have here. And so we have this kind of cool roof cantilevering out here. And so we have a few parts of this. We have the roof itself, and then we have this kind of support beam structure to hold that up. And so let's start with the roof itself, and then we can do the next part after that. So let's go into our east elevation, and we have this floor down here. And so I'm not a very big fan of doing roofs by extrusion. But I think this is one case that you want to do roof by extrusion because there's not really another way to create a funky shape like this without doing roof by extrusion. But before I do roof by extrusion, we kind of want to set a datum line. So again, I'm a big fan of trying to make things have some sort of control point, some sort of accuracy to that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this datum line up just a little bit here. And let's grab a dimension and see what the height of this is. So we have maybe 2.7 meters. So I think that's, maybe we'll go to 2.8, make it a nice number. And so we have our level 3 here, and we'll call this observation roof. And again, it's not really necessary to have these datum lines, but I think it just adds a bit more control to what you're doing. And so let's now go to roof by extrusion, and we're going to set our plane to be doesn't really matter in this case. So we're in elevation, so we can just pick a grid line. So let's just double check which grid line. So we want grid line A. So let's go back to our east and let's go roof by extrusion, and we're going to start with grid line A. And that's just our first grid line. So it really doesn't matter, but I think this is just a bit more simplistic to do it this way. So we're going to pick this one, and then we're going to do our offset at our observation roof. And so now we got to create this curve. And so we want to cover this whole observation deck. And if you think about this, if it's raining out, you probably want to have a big overhang because, you know, if someone's at this observation, or snowing for that matter, you want to have enough cover. And so what I might do is I might just start by doing an RP, a reference plane, and maybe we'll do 1.2 meters. So we'll do a 4-foot overhang. And I think that'll be a sufficient overhang to have if you were at this observation deck. And so now to create the curve, maybe we do something like this, and we curve like so. And again, how you actually create this curve and what you create, up to you. Not a big deal. You can have a little bit of control over that. So let's click our check mark here. And now we have this roof, and we can use the same standing seam roof that we picked before. And I think that'll be pretty cool. In a few minutes, we'll do something with that. So let's see what this looks like in 3D. So now we have this observation deck going across here. And the extrusions start at grid line A. And we want this to go all the way to the end here. So let's go, let's see if we can see it in level 1. We do see it in level 1. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an RP, and we're going to add a reference plane going 1.2 meters past on each end. 1.2. And I just want the roof to extend 1.2 meters past our grid line so that there's a little bit of overhang on the edges as well. And as you can see, I use a lot of reference planes, but it's really about creating control and just not, you know, artificially drawing wherever you feel like it. And I mean, I don't mean that's a bad thing, I guess, but it is nice sometimes to have control, and you know that everything has a dimension and a place. So that's looking good. I think the one thing I'm actually going to adjust though, because these windows here, right now these windows are like facing at this roof. I think if this was an actual observation roof deck, and maybe we'll have to look at the topography for this as well, but maybe we should lower that deck down a little bit so that you can see out with those windows. But let's let's maybe address the topography and we'll see what that looks like. So I think topography is a really challenging thing for a lot of people. And I think I talked to a few students last week about topography. It's sometimes better to move the topography than it is to actually move the project base point. And I think a lot of people disagree with me on that. But I just find when you're using a template, which, you know, the quiz that obviously creating that template, I think the nice thing about not moving your project base point is all those views will always be in the same place. And so how do we address that? So one thing that we do actually is we sometimes do our site file in a separate Revit file and link it in. Because then when we link it in, we can artificially move up and down that without actually changing our building. And I think that's really complicated, and we're not going to go over that today. But that's certainly something you can do if you want to keep your elevation of your topography lines accurately. I don't know, does that make sense? Kind of. So when we create the topography in a separate Revit file and we link it in, we're actually not adjusting the elevation, we're just lowering the link. And so how those files are linked is separate. So anyways, I'm not going to go over that today, but what I think for simplicity's sake is we're going to actually lower our topography down. And so I'm just going to move vertically this topography down, and we want to get it below our building. And so we want to find a place that makes sense. So, I think if we were coming into this property flat, we may want to actually lower this even lower, because if you're walking in, you don't want to necessarily walk down. You maybe want to walk flat across. And so we'll leave our building like that. And then now that we have that, let's take a look at our topography in our view here. And let's see, I'm going to hide this link again, this CAD file. And so it looks like from that side, we are at a pretty good level. Let's look at it from the other side, and let's see where we are on the west side of that elevation. So we are pretty high on this side, but I think there should be some opportunity to lower that down just a little bit. So let's go back to our elevation there, and we're just going to lower this down. So I'm going to grab our observation deck and our observation roof, and I'm going to maybe lower it down. Let's lower it down 1 meter and see what that looks like. Maybe I'm going to go a little bit more just because that's a little close to those levels right now. So maybe we'll go another 0.4. And so I think the cool thing now with this is we are actually a decent amount below these windows, so you could still see out when you walk in. So anyways, that's a little bit of architectural, I guess, opinions, I guess you could say, on that. But it's nice to have that flexibility. And we deal with a lot of slope topography in our work, so this is something that I'm quite familiar with doing. And we do cut topography as well, but it's obviously nice to do as little modifications as possible and use the site as much as possible. So, all right, so we have this here. We have our observation deck. The next thing we need to do is figure out a way to get down to this observation deck, and that's obviously in the form of a stair. And so to start with that, I'm going to add a bit of a floor outside of this window here. And that's just, you want some sort of landing point. You want some sort of, maybe not jump off point is probably a good word, but you want some point to get out of the building there, and maybe just to have some space before you actually walk down the stairs. So let's go to a floor here. We're going to do our same metal decking, and we're going to keep that floor in line with our reference planes. And maybe we'll go out, 2 meters. And what did I just do? Let's try that again. So we'll come out roughly 2 meters. And I think the way that this was drawn in the PDF, the stairs are coming kind of straight down like that. You're welcome to do that if you want. I'm not too concerned if you follow this sketch exactly. But we can attempt that, and we can see what that looks like. So let's go back into here, and let's draw a stair and see where that stair comes up. And so we're going to start at our observation deck level. And let's see, I just have a feeling this is not going to work out very well, so that's why I'm kind of suggesting this. And I'm going to use a cast-in-place monolithic stair. And so we need to go from observation deck to level 1. And we need 19 risers. So that's a pretty significant amount of risers. And it looks like it does barely fit. But I think that might not be a great way of going down, up and down. And so maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this on a bit of an angle. I don't know, just do something a little bit weird here. And we're going to make our run width a little bit wider. So let's maybe go 2 meters wide. So it's a little bit more substantial of a stair. And once we get to a certain point, we'll then go the other direction on the angle. And so let's do that. And I'm just going to move this stair down slightly, because then when I make it wider, it won't give me any error messages. And then I'm going to bring this back down so that it's in line with the corner there. And so we're going to have something that looks like this. Let's move this maybe down a little bit more. We might have to adjust the heights just to see if we have enough clearance for everything here. So let's click our check mark there. And, I'm obviously just winging this a little bit, but now we have this stair coming down. It looks like we have some height issues, so I'm going to have to change that again. So maybe the best way of doing the stair is actually just coming off the side. So that kind of fancy idea didn't really work, but I think it's a good thing to try. Like, it's good to experiment and kind of try to figure out what is a good way of doing this. So I'm just going to rotate this here. I'm going to use place. I'm going to grab the center. I'm just going to rotate this 90 degrees. And maybe actually this works out way better, because what we could do is have this stair on either side of our kind of deck here, and it goes down. And so maybe that's kind of a cool way of doing it as well. So we have this stair kind of on either side, and I just mirrored that over to the other side. And it kind of looks like we still have some head clearance issues. So maybe we need to adjust that a little bit more. So I'm going to delete the one side and go back to this side. Here's my other little tip when it comes to stairs as well, is sometimes you want to adjust the bottom, but you don't want to fully redo the stair. And so here's my little tip. So what I want to do is I want to add 3 more steps. So I'm going to move this stair over equivalent of 3 spaces. And you can see here there's this little arrow button on your staircase, and that's to flip direction. So this is my kind of trick with stairs, is I will flip the direction. I'm going to remove the stairs from here. So I'm going to remove 3 steps. I'm going to hit the check mark, and then I'm going to hit flip direction again, and then I'm going to add the stairs back to here. And so the cool thing about doing this is you don't actually affect, you don't have to fully redraw your staircase if you already have it there. It's just a matter of kind of making some adjustments. So now it looks like we have enough room to get down that staircase to our observation deck, and maybe I need to add a few more stairs. Looks like we do need to add a few more stairs. We are observation deck to level 1. Why do we not have... Oh, it's just farther out. That's why it's not touching. Okay, I was just confused by that. So let's go to our observation deck here, and let's just add a little bit of floor here so that our stairs connect. And I'm just going to make the floor go underneath the first step. Like so, and then I'm just going to use the split element to split this. And we have that little part there. And then I'm just going to mirror this to the other side because we wanted to add a staircase to the other side as well. And we'll just do that same split and trim and extend. So we have a stair, we have a roof, we have some of the basic elements here. We'll just copy the stair to the other side. But the purpose of this exercise just is, I kind of want to show you some of my techniques and how I model stuff. Not that it's like anything crazy or anything like that, but I like to have a little bit more control. And I think that control, as much as it takes maybe a couple extra seconds, it does breed some efficiency as you kind of work through things. Do you want to pause there at all for a little bit? How are we feeling? Is everyone lost? No? Want me to keep going? All right, I'll keep going. So we have these stairs here now. We have a way to get down to this observation deck. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add a bit of structure to this observation deck. I want to make it feel like it's actually able to be held up. And I think with this, I'm going to go to my observation deck level. If you look at this sketch, where's my sketch? It looks like there's some kind of center column in the middle there, and then it V's up to support the roof. And so I'm going to actually add another grid line. So I'm going to actually add another grid line right in the middle here. And for me, I'm just going to do this as a way to control where that center point is on that structure. So we're going to call this 4A. And we're going to do this in a few different methods. I think with this kind of structure, you're going to need some sort of beefy structure to really hold it up. And so I'm going to start by going to Insert, Load Autodesk Family, and we're going to bring in a concrete column, and maybe some steel columns as well, but we'll start with concrete. So I'm going to change my region to US Imperial. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I just find it's a little bit easier to use because it's more common sizing for stuff. And we have this square concrete column. We could also do rectangular as well. I often use rectangular more because you can change both side perimeters. With a square is always a square. So I end up using the rectangular as a square. Not that it really matters, but let's load that one in. And we're going to go to Structure. We're going to go to Column. And we have these concrete columns here. Let's maybe do a 24 by 30. And we're going to place that column right here at this grid. And let's make some adjustments here. So we've only placed one. So let's maybe go down. I'm going to go down 5 meters just so we know it goes into the ground. And then just to accentuate this column, I'm maybe going to take this column above the observation deck. So maybe let's go up 0.6 maybe. And I think that's kind of a cool element because if you have an observation deck and you have this like structural column there, this might act as like almost some informal seating, which is kind of cool as well. And I think you also can accentuate the column and the connection of that. So anyways, not that that really matters, but I think just for my own architectural reasoning, that's what I'm thinking here. So we have our column there. The next thing we want to do is we need to add some vertical support. So those V's that we have going here. But in order to do that, I want to add some more control. And what I mean by that is we maybe have some sort of horizontal beam structure that's running along the course of our building. And we could do that as a separate grid line, but it really depends on what you're trying to do. I find sometimes grid lines are overused, but sometimes they're not used enough. And so I think there's a happy medium in there. And so we could do this with reference planes, or we could do it with grid lines. Let's do it with grid lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy one grid line, maybe. Actually, let's do it from the center here. So let's copy one grid line back 1.2, and we're going to copy it the other way, another 1.2. So I'm just going to go 2.4, and I'm just going to rename these. So I'm going to call this D for a second, and I'm going to rename this one B, and this one A. So we have A, B, C. And so again, the purpose of this is we're using these to actually control that V that we're about to make with those columns. So, and before we do that, we're going to model some horizontal elements. So let's go to our beam, and we're going to model a beam going across this. And we have this universal beam in here. I'm just going to load in a new one. So let's go to Load Autodesk Family, and we're going to go to Structural Framing. And we're going to load in a steel W wide flange. Again, it doesn't really matter. I'm just loading this in. You could deal with a universal beam if you want. And then I'm going to load in something that's decently chunky. I'll maybe go to a W16 by 50. Maybe I'll load in a couple. I'll load in a W14 by 48. W12. And I'm just using the control button on my keyboard to load in a couple at the same time. And structure's a really interesting thing, and I do a lot of structure that we are potentially focusing on the ceiling as kind of a place of doing that. And so my key word there was ceiling. And so what I like to do a lot of times is, well, actually, in our case, we don't have a lot of ceiling views, but I actually model and work with a lot of structure in the ceiling views because I find it's helpful because you can actually see those different elements. And so we're going to go here to our observation deck ceiling. And we don't see our roof right now, so let's go into our visibility graphics. And we're going to raise our top plane. And so when you're in a ceiling, the one thing to remember is your top and view depth. They don't have to be the same, but my rule is you make them the same. So in a floor plan, you make your bottom and your view depth the same. In a ceiling plan, you make your top and your view depth the same. So it's just a different direction for looking. So let's make this our observation roof. And let's make it maybe 1 meter above that, just so that we know that we're seeing all of our roof there. And we are seeing topography. We're going to hide, oh, that's just a CAD file. Let's hide our CAD file. And so now we see our roof across here. We don't see our columns, but maybe we want to see our columns. So let's go back to our view range. And maybe we lower our view depth maybe down to our 0.6. And so that way we can see our column there. So now let's model those beams. So let's go to structure. Let's go to structure. Let's go to beams. We're going to set our work plane to be our observation roof. And we're going to draw our beams all the way across at these different reference planes, like so. And what does this look like? So this looks like this. So we have these kind of beams floating across right here. And so we're starting to get something. And so, you know, part of this exercise is not really modeling structure, but I just want to show you this because we're gonna do this in here, but we're also going to do it in the main building just to add a little bit of flair to this building and make it not as boring. And so the last part before we model our V is we maybe want to have some joists across here. And so let me close my millions of views I have open right now. We're going to go back to our observation ceiling plan, observation deck ceiling plan, and we're going to change this to be fine detail because now we can see the thickness of those beams. And I'm not 100% sure if this will work, but we're going to try it. Our beam system, we can actually set the work plane of our beam system. We can click pick plane, and we can make it, we should be able to make it the underside of that roof. And maybe it's not going to let us because it's curved. And it's not going to let us get curved. That's too bad. I had a feeling that was going to happen. So what I would do in the main building is I'd set our reference plane to be the bottom of that, and it would follow the bottom side of that roof. So I had a feeling it was going to work for curve, but that's fine. We can still do it, and I mean, there's a few other ways we can actually do structure like that, but yeah, let's leave that. And instead, what I might do is I might just add some thickness to this roof, just so we can pretend that the roof structure is in there. So let's go into our standing seam roof, and let's duplicate it. We're going to call this roof with structure, and I'll show you that technique on the structure on the beam system in a bit, but we'll hold off on that for a second. So I'm going to add 2 more layers here. We're going to add a ceiling. So this will be our ceiling layer. So we're going to add wood boards, wood planks maybe. What do we have here? Wood, oak flooring. So I'm going to duplicate material and asset, and I'm just going to call this wood ceiling. And we'll click OK. We're going to add our structure in here, which will be our structure timber joist rafter layer. And we'll make this layer, probably make this layer maybe, let me just think here, 0.3. And then we'll make our wood ceiling would be it'd probably be 0.02, so like 20 millimeters. And we'll move this down, and this will be a finish. And it'll look something like this. So that's a little thicker. And what we're going to do here is now we're going to raise these beams up so that they're at the underside of that structure. So just measuring this, so each one of these is going to be at a different height. So measure this, we need to go up by 1.7 meters. So we'll go up. I like to do the Z offset, so I'm going to do 1.7 up. And that is too high. Why is that too high? Is it 1.3? 1.17. I'll just do 1.1. So that's there. And we'll just measure this one up a little bit. So, you know, my goal, I know this is like, I'm kind of just rambling at my own pace up here, but my goal with this is, you know, this assignment just looks a little bit better. It's not just the basic assignment. I want to show you some techniques to get a little bit more out of what we're doing with this assignment. So hopefully that makes sense and you don't feel like this is a waste. But we have this kind of roof structure here. We have our beams. And the next step would be to create that V. And so east-west view doesn't really matter. But what we want to do is we want to create a slanted column. And so it's probably going to want you to actually do it in floor plan. So if we go to our ceiling plan, we go to column. And again, let's see what we have in here for columns. So we just have these two. So let's load one in. Insert, load Autodesk family. Let's go back to our column. Structural columns. And let's find W wide flange column. And let's maybe do a W12. W12 by 40, and maybe a W10 by 45. Let's load those in. And so what we're going to do now is just draw these columns. So we're going to go to column. We're going to go to slanted column. And so the way this is going to work is we want to click our first click will be our observation deck. And then our second click will be our observation roof. And I can't remember what the offset is for our observation roof, so I'm just going to leave that as nothing right now. But we know our first click, our observation deck, is 0.6 meters above. So we're going to click that. And I'm not going to actually click right on the center point. I'm actually going to have the column be a little bit away from that. And I'm just going to artificially, actually we'll do 1 meter. 1 meter, and we'll go this direction. And then we'll go 1 meter, and we'll go this direction. And let's see what that looks like in our west view. So we have these massive columns. And I picked a there's W40, that's pretty big. Let's do a W10. So that looks something like that. That might even actually look a little bit too big. W10. So now we kind of have this V here. And we can do a couple things with this. You can see how it's not really touching the base very well. So there's actually a coping tool. So we can use the coping tool under modify and just to cope the bottom, to notch it, I guess. And we can notch, well, let me, I think we got to do it the other way. Cuts on concrete members are ignored. Well, let us notch. Doesn't want us to notch it. All right, we won't notch it. There's another way we can do that later, but I will just leave that for now. So now we kind of have this structure set up here. And so the last part of this is I'm going to actually group all three of these pieces together. So I'm going to grab the concrete piece and then the two steel pieces. We're going to create a group right here. And we're going to call this our observation column. And we're just going to copy that over here to our other grid lines. So hopefully that makes sense, what I was rambling about with all that. But now we have this kind of cool structure that is uniform and kind of repeats all the way through this. We could certainly add another column to the end, but I think it's kind of cool with that kind of mysterious overhang. But now we have a pretty nice observation deck coming down there. And so just a couple things to wrap up part of this exercise. I do want to do some timber in the roof on the main building because I think it'll just make it look a little bit better. And so in order to do that, I'm going to do the ceiling plan thing again. So I'm going to go to our level 1 ceiling plan. And I'm going to hide our CAD file here. And so I'm going to do the same approach. So I'm going to do, or same approach I attempted to do, I guess. We're going to go to structure, and we're going to go to beam system. And we're going to hit up here, set work plane. And we're going to click pick plane. And what we want to do is pick the underside of this roof. So you can see how this one actually selects now. And the cool thing about this is if we wanted to show some timber elements on this building, I'm just going to change my beam direction, we can do it in a way that it follows the roof that's there. And so when we just look at what we just did there very quickly, now we have these I-beams coming down on the underside of that roof. So it looks a little bit more kind of robust, more like a cabin. And so let's change these to timbers. So let's go to Insert, Load Autodesk Family, and let's go to our structural beam, our structural framing. Let's find our timber column here. Is it going to pop out nicely? Where is it? ST timber. For the timber, I'm probably going to load in 8 by 10. Let's load in. I'm just going to load in a bunch of these. Yeah, so I'm just going to load in a bunch of sizes so I have them. You can certainly load them all in if you want, but up to you. And so I'm going to select our beam system here. And, you know, this is the same that your studio project is, but obviously just we have it attached to that roof. So let's make this an 8 by 10. So now we kind of have these timber pieces coming out here. And that's what I was going to try to do with the observation roof, but because it's a curved surface, it won't let you pick that plane. But, you know, this starts to look a little bit better. And we'll just do a couple more pieces of timber here, and then I'll maybe pause for a little bit. So let's go back to our first floor ceiling plan. And let's do the other side. And we're not seeing them because we have fine detail not on, so let's turn the fine. And we're probably also not seeing them because we have a view range issue. So let's check our view range of our ceiling plan. So let's make our view range like level 2. And let's see if we can see those timbers now. We still don't see them. Let's maybe make this 6. Oh, I actually know why. Timbers, our structure is off by default in ceiling plans. Don't ask me why, but it is. So that's just a Revit default thing. And then I'm just going to select all these tags and just delete these tags. Don't really need those tags on there. And so let's do this timber to the other side, structural beam system. And we're going to set our work plane. Again, we're going to set it to be this other side of the roof now. Pick plane. Going to be this other side of the roof, like so. This one's a little bit more complicated because this one, we actually want to not do it in this section. And I don't know why it's giving us that angle, but let's draw these manually. And again, same thing, basically. So we're going to have our beam system go along here, and then we just need to change our direction to be that same direction. And we keep our timbers the same size. And I forgot to turn off the automatic tagging thing again. Delete those tags. And then just 2 more to do. We just have this front area. So let's do beam system again. Let's click set. We're going to pick plane again. We're going to set our underside of this roof. And we will click like this. I'm just going to bring this line in like so. We could, now that we've done this, and again I forgot to, I'm just going to leave that on for a second. We could just now mirror this. I sometimes do that, but I usually like to go back and click Pick Plane and just make sure it's attached to that plane. And then we can select these timbers here, or these tags, and delete them again. And so now we have a really nice timber kind of framing look to potentially our building here. We can select all of our beam systems, and maybe we make our let's make our spacing the same. So let's make our size the same. So we'll do our 8x10, and then maybe our spacing probably should be maybe like 900 millimeters, 3 feet. So we have some more timbers there. And just a few last little things with this. We want to do maybe some bigger timbers on a few spots. So maybe we want to have a ridge beam. Select all these, delete them. So maybe we want to have a big ridge beam coming down the middle here. So we can go to our timbers. We can find maybe a 12x20. We can draw this ridge beam. We can do 3D snapping. And we'll snap it to this kind of ridge part here. And then we can also do valley beams. So the cool thing about this 3D snapping button is we can do our valley beams as maybe a 12x14, and we can snap them to these valleys as well. It doesn't like that one. Let's try that again. Let's see if I can hit the tab button. If that doesn't work, we can also mirror this one over. That should mirror over fine. But I think just with a few of these little things, we can make this building look a lot better. And maybe I'll just drop this ridge beam a little bit. So let's drop this negative 21 inches. Yeah, so just by a few things, we can make this building look a little bit better. So hopefully that helps. I'll pause there for a little bit. Does anyone have any questions before I pause? Does anyone want to go over anything again?
When you do the same thing but on the observation deck, would you just do that in the rendering process?
To have the beams?
Yeah.
I think we have to do it as a model in place mass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think that's why that's probably the easiest way to do it. Yeah, I guess it doesn't want to like loft that beam on a curve, basically. So yeah, and even to build that from a real world perspective, like we've actually looked at doing curved timbers in a few projects, and it's possible. But one thing they often do is they'll take instead of curving a timber, they'll take like a 24-inch timber and they'll cut the curve out of that timber. So they're not actually curving the beam, they're just making it curved by cutting it. When you use glue lambs, like the new Limberlost building that we will be moving into, hopefully before you guys graduate, in January, or at least if you're doing the technology part, the CLTs, what they can do is they actually create a form that's curved. And when they layer each layer on, they layer it on, glue it, layer on, glue it, and so they actually glue it in a curved form. And so because they do it that way with glue lambs are a little bit easier to have curved, but usually it means like special ordering it. So there's a company called, I think they're called Structure Craft. You should look them up on Instagram or just look up their website. But they do some really wild timber structures. Like I think they have one where the timbers kind of like bend in the middle, and then they have some steel trusses to kind of like help support them as well. So it's like a mix of steel and timber. So anyways, but yeah, modeling, I think we'd have to model in place for that. So, other questions? How are we doing with all this? We want to take, maybe we'll take a break for like 15 minutes. Cool. All right, so just one of the questions I just had now, which is ultimately our next kind of portion of this. So if you look at this sketch, we have this kind of roof coming straight down like this. And I think this is a really good point because I kind of take the same approach as we did with the front roof. And so like for me, I don't like to like have one roof do everything because I think it leads to a lack of control with things. And so what I'm going to do here is in my model, I actually created these two kind of parts on each side. And so we're gonna basically have one on each side to cover both of those areas. And so let's go to our level 1 floor plan. And actually, you know what? Maybe we will. I use ceiling plans a lot, so maybe we'll go to our level 1 ceiling plan, and just so we can see where the edge of that roof is. And we're just going to start with one side here. So what I'm going to do is I go to the architecture button. I'm going to grab roof, and it doesn't like our reference plane, so our work plane. So let's set a new work plane. We're going to set our work plane to be our level 2. And here's one trick I have for these roofs. There's a few different ways you can actually draw this, but I'm going to start by doing a roof by footprint. Again, I don't really like doing roofs by extrusions. I avoid them whenever I can, but obviously a curved roof you kind of have to. So I'm going to do this roof by footprint, and so I'm just going to actually just draw a box here right now, and it's just going to be a bit of an artificial box. But I'm actually going to pick wall on this one wall right here. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to do a pick wall here, and we're going to flip this out. And this is going to have our 900 millimeter overhang that we have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim and extend all of these lines here. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want this line to be attached to that wall. So if we move that wall, it's going to kind of move and be aligned with that roof. Not a big deal. You don't necessarily have to do it that way, but you could. I'm going to select these 3 lines here. We're going to turn off define slope. With these slopes, you can actually do a negative roof slope. And so essentially I'm attaching this to our second floor up here, and I'm going to go negative down versus going positive up. So it's going to kind of like go this way instead of that way, if that makes sense. For those watching the videos later, you don't have the benefit to see my gestures, but we're going to make this negative 45 degree. And then before I click the check mark, I'm just going to go to our observation deck here, and I just want to make sure we cover this staircase. So what I might do is I might just see what are we at here. It's not giving me any dimensions. So I'm just going to go to our RP, my favorite button, and I'm just going to make this overhang 1.2 meters on each side of the staircase. So I just want to make sure that we're covering that staircase in a substantial way. So let's just bring these lines over. And let's go and click our check mark and let's see what happened. So let's go to our roof. And so now our roof is kind of sloping down in that direction like that. And so I think we are going to have some issues with this just because of where our observation deck is located and all that. But now this roof, I mean, ultimately it is in the right place. So let's go to our east elevation. And the next thing and kind of last part we want to do with this is we're just going to lower this roof down. And we're going to move this point down to there. And so that's ultimately all you have to do to get that roof to join or to do that. I think there's a couple modifications I'm going to make to this. So one is I'm actually going to hold this roof up a little bit off this curved roof. And so essentially if we have any snow coming down there, the snow is going to hit this kind of observation deck roof, but I want the water to be able to slide back underneath. And so let's kind of develop a way to figure out where we need to kind of cut that back. And so I want to make sure we have enough overhang so we're still above this and rain isn't directly coming down. So I'm going to go RP, and I'm going to just find some sort of point in the middle here. And let's just draw this reference plane. And so by actually drawing this reference plane will be able to see it in our floor plans. And by doing that, it'll allow us to actually have control and then ultimately cut this roof. And so, again, I'm just going to find a nice number here. So from this wall out, maybe we go 4 meters. It's a nice number. And so now that reference plane will be there. And we can take this roof by footprint here. We can edit footprint, and we can go to our level 1. And now we can find that reference plane we have there and bring it back. And so now, you know, I probably wouldn't have designed this to be this way normally, but I mean, it does work, I guess, right? So that roof is working in that kind of area. It's a little bizarre, I would say, but it does work. If you wanted to modify this for yourself, like I don't need you to do it exactly like this if you want. And with this building altogether, like you can adjust grid lines, you can have some freedom. I probably understand that you probably don't want to have any freedom and probably don't care about this assignment at this point, but if you wanted to have some freedom, you're certainly welcome to. So we have this roof now. Let's go back to our level 1 ceiling plan. And what I'm going to do is just grab this roof and I'm just going to copy it to the other side. So I think we're getting pretty close to being done this. I want to do a few more things just to clean this up. One of them is going to be fascias. I think fascias are very key just to take your building from a very basic building to something that actually looks really good. And ultimately it just hides that roof edge. And so let's go into the architecture tab. Let's go under the roof button. We're going to go to fascia here. And we're just going to click all the lines of our roof. And we're going to draw that fascia on. And I'm going to probably do maybe a couple different fascias. Let's see here. So we'll do one there. We'll do one on this part. Sometimes, depending on the complexity of the roof, I might do a couple, just so that we don't have too much complexity going on with the roof. So we'll do that. And then I'm going to close that there. And then I'm going to do one more fascia for this observation deck. So let's do roof fascia. And let's do a fascia on this observation deck roof. And it's going to hide that edge of our roof there. And so the last thing to do with this fascia is this fascia isn't tall enough. So I'm going to go edit type here. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to rename this fascia to be our, this one's called 235. So I'm just going to write 235 millimeters for depth. And we'll change, we'll duplicate this and we'll change it to maybe be a little bit bigger. Let's see how big we can go. I think we're going to need more than 286, but let's duplicate and we'll call this, I think we'll need, I'm going to call this 400 millimeters. And so if you look here, we don't actually have a 400 millimeter size for our fascia. And the way this works is the fascia is actually what's called a profile. And so we need to add a new profile to accommodate this. So if we go down here to the families in our project browser, we want to find profiles. And we want to find fascia flat. And we're going to find our 19 by 286. We're going to go to type properties. We're going to duplicate it. So we're going to call this 19 by 400. And we're going to change our height to be 400. And then the last part is we're going to click this fascia and we're going to change that to be the actual 400 piece. So now that fascia covers all those portions of the roof there. I actually really hate these roofs. Not going to lie. It's a certain aesthetic that might interest some, but it does not interest me. So anyways, we'll keep them there like that. You know, it's actually interesting for a building like this. My inclination would actually to make the stairs inside, because I think exterior stairs, especially in our climate in Canada, it's you know, something that you kind of want to avoid on the outside. And so I would personally actually make these stairs on the outside and make a direct walk out. So I mean, if anyone feels like spending their time to do that, they're welcome to do that. So again, this is getting pretty close. The last thing I want to do is I want to modify the topography a little bit. We want to have, you know, a nice kind of ground walk up here. And so I want to show you just a couple little points to kind of complete this exercise. And so we kind of have this glass area on each end. You know, maybe that's a pretty cool place to have, or at least on one of the sides to have some sort of patio. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my level 1 here. And we're going to start by drawing a bit of a walk up on the front here. So we're going to go to architecture. We're going to go to floors. And I'm just going to draw a floor. I'm going to do it from maybe one mullion over to the next mullion. And we're going to draw a floor kind of coming out here straight. And we'll come out maybe come out 6 meters. So there's a bit of a lead up, a walk up to there. So we're going to click our check mark. And what I'm going to do with this floor is I'm going to create a new type of floor. And I'm just going to go to our 300 generic. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this 300 millimeter, or let's call it stone 300 millimeters. And I mean, this could be concrete sidewalk as well. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to make it a stone. So let's go to stone. Let's see, do we have any stone pathways? Roofing, slate, stone, natural soldier course. Let's do that one. Stone, natural soldier course. And, I think that just adds a little bit of flair to this entry. And then, what we're going to do after is obviously fix our topography, so our topography kind of walks up on that nicely. And what I'll do with this is I'm just going to actually drop it by, we're going to drop it by 50 millimeters. And just the purpose of that, negative 50 millimeters. It's just, realistically, you'd probably have a little bit of a drop like that. And it might be less, it might be just 25 millimeters, but you'll just physically have a material drop kind of leading up to that front door. And then we'll do the same thing on the sides, so we'll kind of create a little bit of a patio. Yeah, it's just the same thing. We'll do it from our reference planes on this one. And yeah, and then we'll just copy this over to the other side. And so we have these patios here now. Change these to our stone. And the only other thing I'm going to adjust with these patios is I'm going to add a bit of there's kind of a concrete wall just under them so they're not floating in the air like that. And you could do it on posts and columns, but again, just a couple of these little adjustments to this project I think makes it look quite a bit better. And so let's find a view we can see that in. So let's go back up here. I'm going to go to a ceiling plan to do this. I'm going to go -1 ceiling plan, because then I can see the underside of those slabs. And so I'm just going to go in here to walls, and we're going to do our concrete retaining. And I'm just going to set this back in maybe 0.2 meters. So I'm just going to set this wall back in. And let's just see what happened at 3D. So I'm just going to delete this one here. And let's make this go from level 1 to, or -1 to level 1. And let's go -350, or 0.350. So -300 for the thickness of the stone, and then -50 for the 2-inch offset down. And then let's just go back to that ceiling plan and adjust that in a little bit. -1 ceiling plan. Looks like we don't have enough view range to see that. So let's go up to level 1 and down. Let's go make this down 0.3. There we go. We can see that now. And so I'm just going to set this wall back in. That was my original intention. But let's just set this wall back in 0.2. And just so there's a bit of a lip there. And so, again, there's just a couple things we can do to make this project look a little bit better. I'm not going to fix all the dimensions here. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to bring this wall back in. I think you'd want to make it more of an even number when you do this, or if you do this, I guess. But I think these parts can make this look a little bit better. And then the last part of this exercise is the topography. And I mean, certainly we probably need some railings as well, but for the topography is probably the last real part. So I'm just going to hide this, these property lines here. Where did I hide? What am I hiding here? All right, there we go. So we want to grade this topography, and the way this works in 2023 and before, if we go under masking and site, we can actually create a graded region. And I don't really use this a whole lot, to be honest with you, but I guess maybe rephrase that. I don't use the functionality of this tool a whole lot, but I do use this button. And essentially what it does is it copies the topography, throws one in the existing phase, and keeps one in the current phase. And so you can kind of keep the existing topography lines, but modify the new lines. So we're going to click Graded Region. And it's going to ask us create new topo surface exactly like the existing one. And then you don't really notice anything happen here, but there should be 2 here now. And what we can do is now we can raise some points up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select some of these points kind of in this area here. And I'm just going to delete them because we're going to modify them a little bit. And we're going to delete them anyway, so I might as well start with that. And you can see the adjusted topography already is kind of pulling out of there. And so I'm going to go to my site view. And what I'm going to do is this point is 50 millimeters down. So I'm actually just going to make it a little bit more so the topography just sits down just below the slab. So I'm going to make this down maybe negative 70 millimeters, negative 0.07. And I'm going to click a point here, and we'll click some points near the building as well. And then we'll do the same kind of wrapping around to the corners of this side part. And so now our topography is going to look like this. And what did I do? Did I do negative 70? It makes no sense. Did we raise our project base point? I don't think we did. It is raised. Cool. So we need to adjust something. So let's go here to Edit Topo Service. And let's find those points that we put down there. Okay, I think we need to do something else here. We need to go into here. Base. Yeah, there's a way to change the reference of like what you're referencing. Are you referencing level 1 or are you referencing 0? So I'm just going to leave that for there for a second. I'm just going to make these 635, and then we're going to make it 0.3 instead of 0.7, and that should bring those points up a little bit. I mean, it might need to go up more. What was our project base point? Let's go up. Let's see. Let's go up a little bit more. Maybe I think we'll go up to 236, maybe. See, okay, so we need to go down from that. 235. Oh, it might be, maybe it is 235 point. Be 930. There we go. So now you can see just the slab barely sticks out of the ground now. And so there is a physical lip there, but that's one of the tricks I kind of use with topography is I just lower the topography just slightly so you can still see that walkway kind of leading up to the front door there. And then it also kind of leads up to our kind of observation areas that we kind of created there on the side. So that's just a little piece of topography stuff. What I'm going to do just to finish this off is I'm going to create a bit of a parking lot over here on the side. And so let's go to our site button here. And I'm going to copy this point here. Copy it over. And I mean, your parking lot could theoretically be sloped, but I'm just going to make it flat for my own purposes. Let's make a subregion. And why won't we do a subregion? Subregion, what's this error? Work plane cannot be used for this operation. Let's set a different work plane. Architecture set. So we'll set our work plane to be our level 1. And let's go to massing and site. Let's go to subregion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating a box. And then we're going to edit it with, I guess, some parking spots in a minute. But essentially, we're going to kind of create a little bit of a drive up to get into this parking lot. And then a kind of a drop off location. Then maybe I'll offset this by like 6 meters. Take these extra lines here. And, again, the purpose of this is to just add some more context to this project. And I think this is super relevant for your studio projects as well because, I think just adding a little bit of extra work to clean up some of this stuff makes your projects look better. As much as it's really not what you're being asked to do, and, maybe in the grand scheme of things doesn't really matter, but I think it will make them look better. So... and usually what I'm doing topography like this, I usually start off with square lines and I'll add some radiuses. So I'm going to leave that for a minute before I add the radiuses. And once I do this, why are these intersecting? Is there 2 lines here? Oh, there is 2 lines there. We're going to change this material to asphalt. Asphalt pavement. And so if we change this view to be a shaded view, which we are in, so it kind of looks like we have a parking lot here now. Maybe we want to add a retaining wall here, so I'll go to my site view. I'm just going to model a wall on the outside of this area here. And we'll leave a little bit of ground there, but we'll just bring this wall a little bit past. And just adds a physical barrier to look like it's not, someone's not going to drive off the cliff there. And then I'll go to my site here, and we have this rough parking lot laid out. So once I do that, I will go into my components, and the parking spot should be automatically loaded in here in Revit. And what I like to do is I add these parking spots, and we can pick host, and picking host will bring them onto the that area itself. So it is cutting through the ground, I guess, but it is showing somewhat there. We'll just array this across, and then what I usually do once I do this, I adjust that topo subregion to fit the parking spots. So I kind of have it roughly laid out to start, and then we adjust a little bit after. So I'll use the array button, and we're going to move this over to the next line. And we'll maybe make this like 8 and see what happens. Try 10. Need to go more. 14. 14 is too much. 12. 12 is fine. And so we'll have that. And then what I'll do is I'll copy this up to the other side. And I did not mean to do it on an angle. So we'll mirror this up somewhere. And I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. And we're going to delete some of these end parking spots. So I'm going to delete one more on the end here. And I'm going to create a bit of kind of a return. So we'll bring that line into there. And then I'm going to draw this line like this. One thing I don't like about these parking spots is they don't have a line on both sides, which I think is weird. So I think in ours, we've actually added the line on both sides. So it actually makes sense. I think the idea is when you repeat, then you won't have a double line, but I just think it looks weird. So now that we have this, we can add a little bit of a curved area here. We can curve this area. We can curve that. And just finding some radiuses here to curve these roads, and then using the trim and extend command to clean this up. This one we can just delete. And again, just some simple things you can do to clean up. And I think this is really useful for your studio projects itself, for that parking lot area you have. And then beyond this, you could model a curb all the way around. So again, last week we talked about modeling the curb as being just a kind of a concrete wall. So you could model that concrete wall around as a curb. But now we have a bit of a parking lot here, and what I might do is just fix this one point. So that's all level. Fix this point so it's level as well. Is this? I think I need to add another point here. So just adding some extra points is helpful to kind of clean up that. So again, just in like a few things, we didn't do a whole lot to this, but doing a few things kind of helps really clean this up and make it actually look like a building, not just some fictitious building that we have here. So I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm going to stop this recording. We're going to kind of roll into what we're going to be doing for quiz 5. And I'm basically going to take this building and copy it onto that template. So we're going to kind of just do that for the last portion of class here. And then next week we will kind of finish this exercise up with some renderings and some stuff. So let me pause.